I was born here, but there were no schools. So just like my father had to go all the way to Dehradun in India for schooling, and it took him 15 days to get there, I had to go to a boarding school in Kohat. And it'll be interesting to tell you that in the 1950s, that convent school in Kohat was a co-education school where we had both girls and boys next door to each other in separate dormitories. You can't even imagine something like that happening now in the same place. So that's what sometimes saddens me. But so my childhood was mostly spent in this boarding school. It was run by Catholic nuns. And I would only come home on holidays. Sometimes I would come home after quite a few years. And I remember that I had even forgotten to speak my own language. So I sat in front of my mother and she kept crying and she said, "What has your father done to you?" Because we couldn't communicate in Khowar, which is our language. After having done my senior Cambridge, joined the Pakistan Air Force. And the Pakistan Air Force wanted me to become a pilot, but realized that I can't become a pilot. And they said, "You don't have the aptitude to become a pilot. But what we can do is send you to the Pakistan Military Academy and you will save on 1 year because you'll be taken in the second term there." So I joined the army, but I always had it in mind that I must prove the Air Force wrong because I was very keen to fly an aircraft. So the first opportunity I got in the army, I joined the Air Corps, the Pakistan Army Aviation. I flew some helicopters and some fixed wing, and then took early retirement, and my mind was still set on flying. So after having done only 10 years in the army, retiring as a major, I started my flying career by joining a flying club in Karachi. And I got myself a license, and I was so happy when one day, as the captain of a 707, I was flying over the Atlantic Ocean from, say, Frankfurt to New York. And that's the day I felt when I proved that, the Air Force in their assessment may have gone wrong. Behind this hotel was a dream, because as an airline pilot, you live in and out of hotels all through your life, almost as much as 20 days in a month. So I always wanted to have a hotel of my own and wanted to put in some of the features that I had seen in other hotels all around the world. But I didn't know how to really go about it. It was just a dream, and a dream is a dream. And then madness took over. And when madness took over, everything started coming into place. So I really tell people that you ought to have an element of madness, what you may call love, what you may call passion. But in my case, it was pure madness. Everyone in Chitral, there was not a single one who said I was doing the right thing. Everyone, all my people who liked me, all my relatives, everyone, they said that what you're doing is madness. To a foreigner, I would like to tell them that it used to be, and it still is, a very special part of Pakistan. It used to be special because it was a little kingdom of its own. It was quite cut off from the rest of the country, even during the days of the British, and even during the time when it became part of Pakistan. So to have a place where for 6 months you cannot access your motherland, that itself made it very special. Can you believe that only until recently, and by recently I'm not saying more than 20 years, we used to drive through Afghanistan to get to Pakistan. Now how more special can you get there? So what that did was it taught people patience, it taught people to be self-sufficient, and it taught people not to crib about small things and get on with their lives. It also taught people that no matter how good the intentions of the government may be, they may not be able to get to you for natural reasons. You know, you have a huge pass between yourself and the rest of Pakistan, snowbound. You're driving 7 hours through Afghanistan to get to Pakistan. So the country, no matter how well-meaning any government may be, they may not be able to come to you when you need them. So people started, having faith in themselves and in being able to create an inward strength which would make them go through many very difficult periods. Now, of course, everything is very easy, and when sometimes visitors come over here and they talk about our bad roads, we really fully can't understand that, because for us it's an improvement. Even these bad roads are a huge improvement for what it were like before. Many of us have done these on horseback. The journey from here to my village, which is Mastuj, used to take us 4 days, and we used to do it on horseback along with my sisters, and it now takes 4 hours. So everything is really an improvement from when you see it from our point of view. Of course, from the others, from visitors who come here, they expect the roads to be better, and they should be better. And I think it's just a matter of time before we also get the roads that the rest of the country has. This isolation that I talked about, and the fact that we have been cut off from Pakistan, from the rest of Pakistan, it's given us an advantage. The advantage really is that you can come here and see nature in its pristine way, in the way you would want to see nature. And therefore, the destruction that we have seen in other places like in Murree, Kaghan, and which is now also going towards Gilgit and Hunza, that hasn't really come here. So relatively, it's still clean, it's spacious, it's more closer to nature. And this is what, at least foreigners who have seen it all, they want to come and see how is it like to live in a place like Chitral, where they have some serious disadvantages, but they're happy. They're happy with their lives. And this is what makes them curious. And also it pleases them to come and see how one is living closer to nature and happily living closer to nature. About the Kailash Valley, the 3 Kailash valleys, I'm not happy because these are very special people. These were actually the people who used to rule Chitral before we came in. Their territory, in fact, extended even beyond what Chitral was in the time of our family. They went across all the way to Gilgit. They went across into Afghanistan, and they deserve better. Many times they have become the face of Pakistan. You see their photographs on the London buses. Now when you come here, you see a torn and tattered road, a difficult road going into their valleys. You see their lives still primitive, they still don't have basic facilities. That is one part of it. The other part of it is that their religion, which is actually worshipping their ancestors and worshipping nature, is also in danger now. It's in danger of them getting converted, and there's no one forcefully converting them really, but their own traditions are going against it. In the end, it's really economics. They can't afford to slaughter 21 goats every time someone dies. Even the dresses that you see, the women wearing those dresses, they're cumbersome, they're expensive. So it's much easier for them to change their religion and say that, I've become a Muslim, I don't have to do all these things. So what was helping them is when the tourists used to come in days gone by, they would come and spend a lot of money in the Kailash Valley. So at least they realized that we are important to tourism, we are attractive to tourism. So therefore, they kept their traditions alive, they kept their dresses alive, because that was what the tourists were coming to see. Then after 9/11, there was a huge drop in the amount of foreign tourists coming into Pakistan. Now that was replaced by the huge amount of tourism that took place from the lower parts of Pakistan, people coming in masses. But they weren't bringing in anything to the Kailash Valley. They were coming in with their own vehicles, they were coming in with their own bottles of syrup, they were coming in with their chips and with their biscuits, and only leaving the trash behind. They were not giving anything to the valley. So the Kailash started feeling the pinch economically, and that it's the economics which is now making them feel that they'll be better off if they convert. It's possible to strike a balance between development and preservation, but I feel that we are not really making any effort towards this. Let's forget the Kailash for a while. Go back to your own cities, go back to any of the cities, even including the capital city. There are no building regulations anywhere. Anyone can, outside a certain small little limit of a few sectors that they have in Islamabad, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever they call you go off to Barakau, you go off to even Banigala where the Prime Minister stays. Haphazard development all over. So whatever good roads that the government tends to build, immediately the shops come up, the houses come up on either side, and they start choking on this. So Kailash would be the same. If you develop the place and yet you don't develop it in the way you're not developing the other places in Pakistan, these valleys are very, very small. So they'll all get built up and congested, and maybe in a way it's good that the road over there is so difficult that it hasn't allowed people to come there and start building their hotels and their shops and everything else that comes with it. The good news is that very recently they are trying to pass a regulation where outside people cannot come and buy land and start building their shops.